political fortunes rise and fall on the economy, and they're also not going to be surprised if those numbers dip again once we get into the doldrums of summer, correct?
Well, they dip. I mean, most of them are kind of lousy. I mean, you know, big, great photo op at the auto manufacturers. Bin Laden, obviously, you know, big. If the economy's lousy, if our houses aren't worth as much, I mean, look at the front page of the New York Times today. Our houses are continuing to decline. The economy is not getting better. But what really matters with all this political chess that's going on in Washington right now is what's going on during the 60 days before the election, because those 60 days will determine the next president. And if the economy's lousy, he's going to have a problem. I don't care who the Republican candidate is, and I'm rooting against all of them, but it doesn't matter who it is. If the economy's lousy in those 60 days and the Republicans have a great candidate, they're going to get the White House back.
And I think it's important for the Republicans to be able to tie the poor economy to Obama. You know, he has continually bemoaned what he inherited. I must say, I saw Governor Christie at a lunch last week, and he said, you know, I knew what I was getting into. I went into it, I fixed it. I mean, I think Republicans have to kind of say, okay, Obama knew what he was getting into. Yes, it got somewhat worse than expected, but has he fixed it? And I wrote a column last week for the Fiscal Times on sort of the idea of what's worse, Chinese water torture or waterboarding, and the notion being maybe we'd all choose waterboarding because it's over and it's done and you move on. I think what's happened in this cycle is that the administration keeps kind of sending out little, you know, programs to help people stay in their homes, programs to help people buy houses, programs to help people buy cars, all of which is kind of, to my mind, complicated the bounce back. And I think particularly in housing, this is a very serious issue. This is a little deep in the weeds. You can't make a political statement maybe out of the fact that the sort of minor league manipulation of the economy has actually retarded our recovery. I think it maybe has. And again, especially in housing, there are a gazillion programs out there. If you were a homeowner underwater in your mortgage, I think you'd be sitting there saying, well wait a minute, I'm not going to try and sell even if I really need to. I think the government's got something to keep me here for another 3 months or whatever. I think it's like this ongoing miasma of government intervention. And I think, honestly, I mean, I've looked at some numbers about cycles, consumer confidence bounce back, and so forth, and I think you can actually make a case that they have prolonged and a little bit smothered the recovery. And anyway, I also would have to say I am so tired of all the chess playing in Washington. I watch these Memorial Day you know, programs this weekend, our fallen soldiers, our honored dead, with these brave people who are representing us, saving our country. What about these lily-livered congressmen? I mean, I'm sorry to be so outspoken, but I am fed up. I think they are, and the latest thing, the Medicare thing speaks for itself. All parties are guilty to some degree, but the Democrats refusing to come up with a budget. Americans should get angry about this. The Tea Party is an angry movement, but it's gotten a little dispersed and unfocused. They need to stay on this. They need to stay on this whole issue of spending. And let me just make one other comment. Sorry. I really came in wound up. I
could tell.
I got on vacation for a few days, so you know, it kind of settles in. The other thing is this trade thing. All right, so we have 3 trade agreements, and they're not moving forward. These are absolutely guaranteed to create jobs because you have this dickering over a job training program that may or may not be meaningful in the final analysis. Get the trade agreements done. I mean, here you can really say Congress and the president is AWOL, as usual. They are doing nothing, and it's an embarrassment. We are about to let slide a massive, the biggest trade agreement other than NAFTA we've ever talked about with South Korea. And by the way, the EU, their trade agreement with South Korea comes in, I think, in June or July at the latest, and looks like now they're going to supersede us, and they will end up with hundreds of millions of dollars of business that we don't get as a result. That is criminal.
You are very smart. You are very wound up.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
You know, you can't. I look at Washington now in that political chess game that sickens me too. It's not, because you point at the Democrats. It's both. It's both parties.
I agree.
It's ridiculous.
Right now, though, on the budget, the Democrats are just looking like sheep.
What happened to all this, you know, uproar about change we were going to see with this new Congress, with people raring to go to go back, go there and fix what was broken, and going with this momentum, saying we're not going to do this. No, we're not going to go back to business as usual. That we're
everything. It's so every cliche you ever heard about Washington is going on there.
Exactly.
I mean,
that's why
to the highest level of my entire life. It is business as usual.
It makes it ring so hollow. It raises. It continues to drive the apathy that goes on with the public, saying, "Wait a minute, no matter what we do, it doesn't
that's right.
matter."
When a politician gets out in front of everyone and says, "But we're going to bipartisan, all the smart people in the room, we're going to," it's none of that. Right. It's the most polarized environment I have seen in my lifetime in Washington, D.C.
But do you think that Obama will get tagged with some of that? Because I think he should be tagged with some of that.
I don't know that he will, because I think he's got this sort of a Teflon sense to him.
Even though he ran on it.
Exactly.
Right?
I think so much of what he promised and talked about, he's not following, obviously. It's not a Democrat-Republican thing. It's just about the man, the individual, the leader. And you see that he seems to deflect it. It doesn't matter what he's doing right now. It's okay. Nobody's calling him on it. Let's say that. Nobody's saying, and if they do call him on it, it doesn't stick for very long. That's all.
Yeah, it's not. I think probably because there's plenty to call him on if you want to call him on issues. But this
coming from a Democrat, folks.
Well, not for lack of good intention and a little bit of naivete about how D.C. works. It is outrageous to me the way the voting goes there now. It's a very, very difficult environment. It's the opposite of what we all wanted.